to this evening's Theatricos Theater Company presentation of Stories for the Season. I'm Michael Roulon, your host for tonight. Tonight's story is Mr. Bluff's Experiences of Holidays, written by Oliver Bell Bunce and read by Becky Daggett. Theatricos Theater Company has been performing in Flagstaff for almost 50 years and will be here for another 50. We've been busy during 2020, even though the pandemic restricted our ability to gather in person. We've renovated the theater, created numerous performances online, and we're launching a citywide arts podcast live streaming show. We've also had great success during the pandemic by raising $80,000 with our goal of raising another $20,000 to offset our losses this year. You can make the difference. Make your $50,000 to $20,000 donation today by going to theatricos.com/donate. We have a 2021 season of shows carefully curated to be done during the pandemic and as we work our way out of stay-at-home mandates. We're tackling our tumultuous world head-on. Season tickets for the new season will be available starting December 6th, just in time for holiday gift giving. Speaking of holidays, it's time now to sit back and enjoy our newest online production of Stories for the Season.
I hate holidays, said Mr. Bluff to me with some irritation on a Christmas a few years ago. Then he paused an instant, after which he resumed, I don't mean to say that I hate to see people enjoying themselves, but I hate holidays nevertheless, because to me they are always the saddest and dreariest days of the year. I pass through on a holiday the most horrible sensations, the bitterest feelings, sadness. In fact, I am not myself at holiday times. Very strange, I said. I'm not inhuman. I don't wish anybody harm. I'm glad people can enjoy themselves, but I hate holidays all the same. You see, this is the reason. I am a bachelor. I am without family. I am far away from home, and so when the holidays come around, there is no place anywhere for me. I have friends, of course. I don't think I've been a very sulky, shut-in, shy fellow. And there is many a table that has a place for me, but not at Christmas time. At Christmas, the dinner is a family gathering, and I've no family. There is just such a gathering of family on this occasion that there is no place for a friend, even if the friend be liked. So you see, on the day of all the days in the year that my heart wants good cheer, I am without an invitation. Don't tell me, he cried, stopping the word that was on my lips. I tell you, I hate holidays. I can't bear the chill of seeing everybody happy and knowing myself so lonely and desolate. It's miserable to be out, and yet I can't stay home. For I get thinking of Christmases past. The fact is, I've nothing to do but hate holidays. But will you not dine with me? Of course, I had to plead engagement with my own family circle, and I couldn't invite Mr. Bluff home that day when Cousin Charles and his wife and Sister Susan and her daughter and 3 of my wife's relatives had traveled here, all to make a Merry Christmas with us. I felt sorry, but it was quite impossible. So I wished Mr. Bluff a Merry Christmas and hurried homeward through the cold and nipping air. I did not meet Bachelor Bluff until a week after Christmas of the next year, when I learned some strange particulars of what happened to him after our parting on the occasion just described. I will let Bachelor Bluff tell his adventure for himself. I went to church, he said, and I was sad there as everywhere else. Of course, the evergreens were pretty and the music fine, but all around me were happy groups of people. Then I went to the play and sat all alone. I was the only person in the whole theater that was alone. And then there was such clapping of hands and roars of laughter and shouts of delight. all at the fun going on upon the stage, that my loneliness got simply unbearable, and I hated holidays infinitely worse than ever. By 5 o'clock, the holiday became so intolerable that I said I'd go and get to dinner. The best dinner the town could provide, a sumptuous dinner for one, a dinner with many courses, with wines of the finest brands, with bright lights, with a cheerful fire, with every condition of comfort. And I'd see if I couldn't for once extract a little pleasure out of a holiday. The handsome dining room looked bright, but it was empty. Who dines at this restaurant on Christmas but lonely bachelors? My dinner was tasty. The table at which I dined was close to the window, and through the partly drawn curtains I saw lonely, cold streets with bright lights from many a window. It is true, but there was a storm, and snow began whirling through the street. I let my imagination paint the streets as cold and dreary as it would, just to extract a little pleasure by way of contrast from the brilliant room of which I was apparently sole master. I dined well and recalled fancy old youthful Christmases and remembered many an old friend, and my melancholy was mellowing into a low, sad overtone, when just as I was raising a glass of wine to my lips, I was startled by a picture at the window pane. It was a pale, wild, haggard face in a great cloud of black hair pressed against the glass. As I looked, it vanished. It was, of course, only a beggar girl that had crept up to the window and stole a glance at the bright scene within. But still, the face troubled me a little and threw a fresh shadow on my heart. I filled my glass once more with wine and was about to drink when the face reappeared at the window. It was so white, so thin, with eyes so large, wild and hungry looking, and the black, unkempt hair into which the snow had drifted formed so strange and weird a frame to the picture that I was fairly startled. I rose and went close to the pane. The face had vanished. The storm had increased, and the snow was driving in wild gusts through the streets, which were empty, save here and there a hurrying wayfarer. I was haunted by the vision at the window and began with an unreasonable irritation at the interruption to repeat with fresh warmth my detestation of the holidays. And then I said, hunting for justification of my dislike of the day, how many other people are, like me, made miserable by seeing the fullness of enjoyment others possess. Oh, yes, I know, sarcastically replied the bachelor to a comment of mine. Of course, all magnanimous, generous, and noble-souled people delight in seeing other people made happy. But I, you see, and this dear little girl, dear little girl, oh, I forgot, said Bachelor Bluff, blushing a little in spite of a desperate effort not to do so. I didn't tell you. Well, it was so absurd. I kept thinking of the pale, haggard, lonely little girl on the outside and on the cold and desolate side of the window pane, and the overfed, discontented, lonely old bachelor on the splendid side of the window pane, and I didn't get much happier thinking about it, I can assure you. At last, in no very pleasant mood, I got up and put on my coat and boots and went out. And the first thing I did was to run against a small figure crouching in the doorway. A face looked up quickly at the rough encounter, and I saw the pale features from the window pane. I was very irritated and angry and spoke harshly, and then all at once, I'm sure I don't know how it happened, but it flashed upon me that I, of all men, had no right to utter a harsh word to one oppressed with so wretched a Christmas as this poor creature was. I couldn't say another word, but began feeling in my pockets for some money, and then I asked a question or two, and then I don't quite know how it came about. I believed the girl's story of poverty and suffering. I went back and persuaded the steward to prepare food, which the half-wild little youngster helped me carry through the snow, dancing with delight all the way. And isn't this enough? Not a bit, Mr. Bluff. I must have the whole story. I declare, said Bachelor Bluff, there's no whole story to tell. A widow with children in great need, that was what I found. And they had a feast that night, and a little money to buy them a load of wood and a garment or two the next day. And they were all so bright, so merry, so thankful, and so good that when I got home that night, I was mightily amazed that instead of going to bed sour at the holidays, I was in a state of great contentment in regards to holidays. In fact, I was really merry. I whistled. I sang. The poor wretches I had left had been so merry over their unlooked-for Christmas banquet that their spirits infected mine. And then I got thinking again. Of course, holidays had been miserable to me, I said. What right had a well-to-do, lonely old bachelor hovering wistfully in the vicinity of happy circles when all about there were so many people as lonely as he and yet oppressed with needs? Good gracious, I exclaimed. To think of a man complaining of loneliness with thousands of unfortunate people yearning for his help and comfort. Just to think of it put me in a great fury at myself to think of it. I tried pretty hard to escape from myself and began inventing excuses, but I rigidly forced myself to look squarely at my own conduct. And then I declared that if ever after that day I hated a holiday again, might my holidays end at once and forever. Did I go and see my friends again? Well, I would have done more for her, but she wouldn't let me. But just let me tell you about New Year's, the New Year's Day that followed the Christmas I've been describing. It was lucky for me that there was another holiday only a week off. I had so much to do that day and the hours weren't long enough. I did make a few social calls, but then I hurried them over and then hastened to my little girl, whose face had already caught a touch of color, and she, looking quite handsome in her new frock and her ribbons, took me to the other poor folk. And well, that's about the whole story. Oh, as to the next Christmas, well, I didn't dine alone, as you may guess. There was none of that elegance that marked the dinner of the year before, but it was merry and happy and bright. It was a generous, honest, hearty Christmas dinner. Molly, that's the little girl, and I had a rousing appetite. We went to church early, and then we had been down to the 5 Points to carry the poor people there something for their Christmas dinner. In fact, we had done wonders of work, and Molly was in high spirits, and so the Christmas dinner was a great success. Dear me, sir, no! Just as I say, holidays are not in the least wearisome anymore. Plague on it! When a man tells me now that he hates holidays, I find myself getting very angry. I tell him my experience. The fact is, if I were at a dinner on a holiday and anybody should ask me for a sentiment, I should say, I love all holidays.
Becky, thank you so much for that story. And thank you to our audience for joining us. And we hope that you enjoyed tonight's story. Join us again soon for the next performance of Stories for the Season. And please consider donating to Theatricos this month to help us reach our fundraising goal for 2020. You can make a one-time donation or set up a monthly withdrawal from your payment of choice. You can find out more information by going to theatricos.com/donate. Good night and have a wonderful holiday season.